Welcome back, adventurers, once again to Let's Play ChäoS Head. In the last episode, Takumi woke up in the hospital, that is the AH General Hospital, where he was, under a state of deja vu, because at one moment, Nurse Hazuki had wandered in, gave him a thermometer, and told him that he had been in a coma for about a month. And then she went out of the room and then came back in, hence the sense of deja vu, because that first time was apparently a delusion, and the second time was, of course, the actual first time in which Nurse Hazuki was actually coming to check in on Takumi, who was unconscious, but not for the length of time as posited in the delusion. Although for some reason Nurse Hazuki claimed to have heard a little girl along with his parents, who apparently came to visit him when he was unconscious. A little girl who may or may not be Nanami, because if Hazuki is to be believed, the little girl was calling out Oni-chan, which, something about that doesn't quite sit right with me still, but then what has in recent events. But that is a mystery that we'll have to wait for later. Right now, though, another investigation meeting was convened in the Shibuya Police Department's conference room today. Hopefully Ban will have had time to check up on Senna. All of the detectives were exhausted and looked exasperated at the thought of how many hours this fruitless meeting might continue. Around when Matsunaga began listening to the individual investigators' reports, Ban unexpectedly raised his hand and gingerly stood up. I guess there's a first time for everything, although I think that the situation is properly dire if Ban is giving his input without relying on Suwa to do his job for him.
ちょっといいですかね。
なんだね。
Of course, the higher-ups aren't too pleased with Ban's interjection. Not only Matsunaga, but the other detectives and also Suwa, who've been sitting beside Ban, listened to him with dubious expressions. Wearing his usual frivolous and friendly smile, Ban gave them a quick bow with his head, then looked around. At least he's still courteous.
先日インターネット上に投稿されたいわゆる集団ダイブの映像についてなんですが、実はちょっとした発見をしまして。
Looks like Ban's been doing a little bit of digging into the first case.
Eh?
So all that loafing around isn't just for show. That being said, Ban does like to loaf around on the job. Suwa wore a face of blatant surprise. Interesting for one who clearly went behind his superior's back to pursue his own form of investigation. I guess the word I'm looking for here is karma. It was expected, because Ban, who had investigated the film without saying a single word about it to Suwa, who he was supposed to have paired up with. And again, the reason for it wasn't that he wanted to keep it secret from Suwa, but rather...
バン警部補。君は確か貼り付けの捜査担当だったはずだが。
That is true. However, there is more to the new gen cases than meets the eye. And any connection found at this point would be a godsend.
なぜ集団ダイブについて調べている？
Well, that was pretty much what it came down to. Ban had taken independent action, ignoring instructions from headquarters, and if he got Suwa involved in it, a young detective with a bright future ahead of him would get tied down by his superiors. He'd avoided that.
まあ とりあえず見てくださいって。
But Ban as always has his reasons. Laughing foolishly, Ban took two elongated photos from a file close at hand. He stuck them to the blackboard with magnets.
これはどっちも集団ダイブの現場となったコーネリアスタワー屋上の写真です。
Huh. That is interesting.
右の写真は例のミュウツベ投稿映像から抜き出したもの。
So the second photo was from the group diving video online.
左のは昨日の夜私がタワー屋上に行って撮ってきたものになります。
And of course I'll let Barn explain the
何
rest.
か違いに気づきませんか？
Indeed. As Big Bird from Sesame Street used to say, at least I think it was Big Bird from Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others. Spot the difference. His demeanor full of insinuations, Barnes slowly surveyed the large conference room before finally looking straight at Matsunaga. And of course, if you can't spot the difference between these two photographs, then you are clearly not cut out to be a detective in law enforcement.
君は弁護士にでもなったつもりかね。
There is method to Barnes' madness, especially in this instance. Because what's important here isn't simply the difference between the two photographs, but rather the significance of that difference as well.
要点を分かりやすく説明したまえ。
Next to Barn, Suwa kept craning his neck, nor did the other detectives make any effort to hide their confusion.
背景がね、違うんです。投稿映像のカメラは北東へ向かってる。5人が転落したのが北東だったから間違いない。で、映像では3分29秒から約15秒間、カメラが左右へ大きく触れるんですが、その時に東に向いた時の映像がこの右側の写真なわけです。
So this is the eastern view of Cornelius Tower.
コーネリアスタワーの東、つまり六本木方面ですね。東京タワーが夜景の中にしっかり映ってる。赤いから目立ちますね。でもね、もう一つよく目立つものが映ってないんですよ。
Yeah, something that ought to be there that curiously is not.
よく目立つもの？
And of course, Barn has to explain it in very simplistic terms. Eyes narrowed, stroking the scraps of his beard on his jaw with his hand. Barn put on a self-depreciating smile.
六本木ビルズですよ。
Took you long enough. It's fairly obvious. The conference room burst into a commotion. The landscape of both of these views is identical except for one instance. A glaringly obvious tower that is visible in the left-hand corner isn't there in the right-hand photograph. Indeed, one couldn't see the light of the Roppongi's building in the photo taken from the uploaded video. The photo Barn had snapped yesterday, on the other hand, it clearly captured both Tokyo Tower and the lighted windows of Roppongi builds. So it's two buildings that have completely vanished, not just one.
で、たまたま見つけたんですが、コーネリアスタワーのホテルロビーにタワー完成当時のパネルが展示してありましてね。
But what does it all mean?
そのパネルの一つがこれ。
Barn took a new photo out of a file and stuck the two photos next to each other. It too was a picture of the Roppongi view from the roof of the tower, but it was a daytime photo, not a night one.
六本木ビルズが映ってますよね。建設中ですが。
Interesting. A daytime photo of the building being constructed. The rumble in the conference room swelled. Matsunaga fell silent and regarded the photo sternly.
コーネリアスタワーの完成は2001年。六本木ビルズの完成は2003年。
The tower was finished in 2001 and Roppongi builds in 2003.
タワー完成当時の写真では当然ながら六本木ビルズは建設中でまだ高さもほとんどない。だが集団ダイブが起きたのは今年2008年だ。
I thought it was supposed to be 2009.
映ってなきゃおかしいですよね。六本木ビルズ。ちなみに投稿映像に細工された形跡はなかった。
つまり何が言いたいんだ。
I think we'll let Barn lay it out on the table. As though losing his patience, Masunaga urged him on in a grumpy-sounding voice.
非常に言いにくいんですが。
まさか先輩、この映像が撮られたのは2003年以前、つまり5年以上前って言いたいんですか？
Somehow this, yeah, there is a discrepancy here. It is as Barn says, that building was constructed in 2003, but the victims of the New Gen first case died in 2009. I think 8 was a discrepancy there. Oi oi, Sura. I think, yeah. I don't know if Sura just lit the wind out of Barn's sails, or he's actually trying to take the credit here. Barn's shoulders dropped, crestfallen. Of course. Sura had said exactly what he meant to imply, and he admired the young detective's mental sharpness and discernment. But when you stated it straight up like that, it couldn't help but seem much more sketchy. Barnes' prudence about whether or not to say it had returned to the earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. Well, there goes that line of intrigue.
バカバカしい。小説の読みすぎではないがね。映像に映っている被害者5人の顔は一致しているんだ。あれが5年前のもののはずがない。そんなつまらないことを調べている暇があったら、聞き込みの一つでもしたらどうだ、警部補。
あ
あ。Unfortunate. Though Barn is on the right track, ladies and gentlemen. The significance of Cornelius Tower and Roppongi builds shouldn't be discounted so easily.
今のは聞かなかったことにする。それと、後で話があるから会議が終わったら残りたまえ。
Of course, once again, the Shibuya Police Department are probably less interested in actually solving the new gen crimes and more about covering their careers. Barn let out a small sigh, gave up, and sat down. Well, it wasn't like he thought anyone would believe him. Lethargically waving his fan at himself, he inwardly muttered sour grapes. I think that's supposed to be gripes. That said, Barn himself hadn't determined the answer to why the video didn't show Roppongi bills. And yet it wasn't there in the video. So did it disappear? Or is something else afoot? In any case, we're back with Takumi over at the hospital. After I found out that Nanami was alive, a doctor came to me and asked me a number of simple questions. They were questions to determine whether or not my condition was back to normal. As I answered half-heartedly, I made the decision to leave the hospital before my mother arrived. How could I possibly face my family after having been shamed in front of the whole nation? Besides, if Nanami came, I was positive I'd be overjoyed and start bawling. And without any idea of how I felt, Nanami would yell at me straight-faced, saying, "Don't make me worry so much, you moron." When I envisioned that scene, I almost fainted from embarrassment. As a result, I decided to be a strategic retreat before I fell into such a situation. Unfortunately, going back to Sume Academy is probably off the table at this point. After nibbling a little bit of the horrible breakfast they gave me, I furtively left the hospital room. I descended to the first floor and crossed the lobby. Since the hospital hadn't opened yet, the lobby, which was normally bulging at the seams with old people, was now quiet and still, although there were quite a few people still loitering about here and there waiting. I managed to breeze out through the front entrance. Fortunately, the automatic doors opened properly for me. It seems like nobody is inclined to stop him or keep him here any longer. The nurses and physicians might get angry at me for slipping out of the hospital on my own, but all I had to do was avoid going back there until things had cooled down. There shouldn't be any issues with the hospitalization fee since I left the note for my mother with "please pay them later." Though I'd spent the night at the hospital, I felt physically fine, and psychologically, knowing that Nanami was okay had made my gloom lessen considerably. Proceeding with great care, in case Shogun and Yor were lying in wait for me along the way, I hastened back to my base. I don't think that person up on the rooftop was the real Shogun. Just mentioning that yet again. A good thing nobody's ransacked the place, even though they pretty much know where you live now. I'd come back. My emotional state was utterly different from when I'd left here last night. Of course, now I felt refreshed. In fact, I wanted to say a word or two to yesterday's self. You take the bait too easily, M9. Nanami's going to be okay even without you freaking out like that, LOL. That kind of thing. Glad you're feeling a bit better. But yesterday had been really tough. Anything and everything had been tough. In the morning there was that weird phone call. An earthquake took place. My hard disk data got cleared. I've been forced to witness Ayase's failed suicide attempt. Shogun had emailed me. He'd sent me a severed hand. A severed hand. My hyper mood drained away in an instant. Oh dear. I swallowed jerkily and cast my line of sight at the fridge. That hand was in there. Yesterday, before leaving here, after considering what to do about it with my discombobulated mind, I'd stuck the hand in the fridge for the time being. If I left it hanging around outside, it might rot, and the smell of blood would lie thick. Not to mention if anyone came in here and found it, like say you were for example, that wouldn't bode well for Takumi. Sci-fi and anime movies often use the premise that people can remain in an apparent state of death for hundreds of years, as long as you can keep them frozen in storage. In a word, I landed on the same sort of idea. Yesterday I honestly thought that once Nanami was safe, if her hand was preserved with even a little of its former freshness, maybe they could surgically reattach it. There is a contradiction in that statement. If it weren't Nanami's hand, whose could it be? And how was I supposed to account for the cell phone and the bangle? Unless my eyes were mistaken, those definitely belonged to Nanami. When I called her, it connected me to the cell phone in the hand's grip. Or else everything, those parts included, were part of the trap Shogun had laid out for me. Was it really so possible to perfectly replicate Nanami's arm and the cell phone? Well, the cell phone is the same model, obviously, but for it to have the same SIM card number is a huge stretch, and the bangle makes it viably
もう
impossible.
一度確かめてみるべきかも。
But is it a delusion? I wonder. Though I seriously didn't want to. A human hand, disgusting. Recalling it nearly made me throw up, even if it were Nanami's. But simply because of that, I couldn't let it stay in my fridge for who knew how long. At this rate, I wouldn't be able to chill my Coke either. That's what you're worried about? I thought about giving it to the police, but on second thought they'd suspected me of being the new-gen perpetrator, so that's out of our hands. Under those circumstances, it would be suicidal to call 911 and tell them please take a severed hand from me. What should I do? Maybe I ought to throw it away. Probably not. I felt bad. Like it'd be bad to chuck it if it were Nanami's arm, hypothetically speaking. For starters, was it okay to throw a human hand in the garbage? If you were going to, did it belong with burnable garbage, unburnable garbage? So many questions. I scratched my head. Nothing would come of pondering it. For now, I should take a more careful look at the bracelet the hand was wearing and the cell phone it held, to see whether they were Nanami's or not. Again, we don't have a choice in the matter, we have to make sure. I stood in front of the fridge and gripped its handle. I closed my eyes and took 2 or 3 deep breaths. I was tempted to call Remy and have her examine it in my place, but I soon chased away that temptation. Yeah, good call. Remy might be my ally, but finding a human hand in my fridge would make anyone pull back. If I screwed up, she might grow wary of me and send me to the police. My only option was to do something about it myself.
くそ。
Once again, we're in a bit of a tight situation. I gripped my teeth. I took another 2 deep breaths. And my mind made up, I pulled the handle. Gone. I didn't spot it anywhere. The hand that I definitely put in here yesterday. A hand wrapped in aluminum foil. Given the state that you were in, Takumi, you must have forgotten to lock the door last night. Which means that, as before, the person who delivered the hand might have come around and taken it away. Either that or it was a delusion altogether. But if that were the case, then the imposter Shogun should never have known about the hand in the first place. I'd left it on the top level, yet not even a shadow of it remained. It didn't just vanish into thin air, Takumi. In the fridge were several plastic bottles of Coke and some rotting clementines. That was all.
消えた。なんで？
As I said before, it didn't just disappear. Someone took it. It had unexpectedly vanished. I crouched and peeked all the way back to the fridge, to the back of the fridge, but it still wasn't there. Anyway, I couldn't have overlooked it, given that there wasn't much in here and it was mostly empty.
昨日ここに入れたよな。
Indeed you did. Or had I just made myself think that, and in reality I'd left it sitting out? I closed the fridge and looked around the trash-strewn room.
段ボールもない。
The large cardboard box that the hand had been put in. What had I done with it yesterday? I had a sense that I tossed it into a corner of the room, but looks like our mystery intruder has taken that as well. At any rate, my memories of last night weren't very clear, because yesterday had been more eventful than my brain capacity could handle, not to mention that each event had made a huge impact on me, and I'd been out of sorts from start to finish. Calm down, cool your head, and try to get organized. Let's think about why the hand that had been here yesterday is gone. As Sherlock Holmes said in A Sign of Four, well, I'm having to paraphrase here since I can't remember the exact phrasing. You know, eliminate the impossible, and whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. At least that's how I think it goes. Well, we have some few reasons. What reasons can I think of for the disappearance of the hand in my fridge? 1. I was mistaken. I left it somewhere else in my room. 2. Yesterday I took it outside and threw it away somewhere. 3. Shogun took it back. 4. In the truth, the police searched my room and confiscated it. 5. The mass media broke in and stole it. 6. The hand didn't even exist in the first place. Under ordinary circumstances, number 6 would be very likely, but I'm gonna bet my chips on number 3. Shogun, that is the fake Shogun, took it back. Now, of course, Takumi saying there, I started up my word processing software and began writing up a list of the various possibilities that occurred to me, the list that I've just read out right now. Takumi did all the writing, I just read it. But that is going to be it for this episode of Let's Play Chaos Head, and when we return, adventurers, we'll have to put the mystery of the disappearing hand aside for the time being and focus on where we go to from here. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.